Welcome to our video on Wisconsin lease and landlord tenant laws. Landlords need to be familiar with state lease laws to manage their property well. To help you do that, here are some important landlord tenant laws in the Badger State. First, let's talk about the most important document landlords use, the lease agreement. This is the foundation of the landlord-tenant relationship. It's a legally binding contract between a landlord and tenant that outlines all rules and terms of the rental relationship. The most common type of lease agreement is a one-year, fixed-term lease. This is often referred to as a standard lease agreement. Beyond the basic terms of the lease, there are some additional things that landlords must include in their Wisconsin rental contracts. The lease must include the name of the landlord and any agents of the landlord that are permitted to enter the property or collect rent. Plus, the lease should include an address for official notices. Landlords that collect a security deposit must notify tenants in writing, within 7 days of the start of the tenancy, that the tenant has a right to inspect the property for any defects and view the previous tenant's list of security deposit deductions. If the tenant's rent does not cover water, heat, or electricity, this must be stated in the lease agreement. Wisconsin lease agreements must provide specific language about domestic abuse protections. If the property was built before 1978, landlords must provide tenants with a lead-based paint disclosure and pamphlet.
Next, let's talk about key Wisconsin landlord tenant laws. There are no limits on the amount a landlord can charge for the security deposit. The landlord should return the deposit within 21 days of the end of the tenancy. Landlords can enter the property for non-emergencies after giving at least 12 hours notice. Landlords should only enter during reasonable hours. Any late fees must be discussed in the lease agreement and can only be imposed after rent is at least 5 days late. Fees must be reasonable, and Wisconsin courts have found that $20 or 20% of the late rent due is presumed reasonable. Wisconsin landlords may require tenants to get renters insurance. This is something we always encourage landlords to do. Landlords may charge up to $15 for a returned payment fee. In Wisconsin, fixed-term leases terminate at the end of the period unless otherwise stated in the lease agreement. If there is an automatic renewal, landlords must remind tenants of this renewal at least 15 to 30 days before the deadline for the renewal. Month-to-month leases can be terminated with 28 days' notice and may only be terminated at the end of the rental period. Wisconsin does not limit how much a landlord can increase rent. However, the lease should specify the procedures and notice requirements for rent increases.
Wisconsin landlords must keep the rental unit in a reasonable state of repair, make all necessary structural repairs, and comply with local housing code requirements. Tenants should notify landlords of any needed repairs or maintenance. Tenants in Wisconsin have specific rights, including the right to withhold rent if the landlord fails to make necessary repairs. Retaliation by the landlord against tenants is strictly prohibited. If a tenant fails to pay rent or violates the lease agreement, the landlord may be forced to start the eviction process. When doing so, landlords must strictly follow all Wisconsin laws. Landlords can never resort to self-help eviction methods, such as changing locks or shutting off utilities. Congratulations, you're now ready to create a Wisconsin lease and manage your Wisconsin rental unit. While the lease laws might sound complicated, our Wisconsin lease automatically includes all required disclosures and gives you status tips as you create your lease. We make it easy to comply with all Wisconsin lease laws. Before you turn over possession of your rental, make sure you screened all tenants, have an executed Wisconsin lease agreement, and you've collected the entire security deposit and first month's rent. As you manage your rental, remember that we have over 400 property management forms, including Wisconsin-specific forms. Visit easylandlordforms.com to start your tenant screening, create a Wisconsin lease agreement that's guaranteed to comply with all Wisconsin lease laws, and access Wisconsin property management forms.